Okay, as I take a little bit of a break away from the politics, this is something that I really want to talk about for a couple different reasons. One, I would really, really like to know people's opinion on this. Comment below whether you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube. And also, as most people know, I am a cartoon fan, especially with the adult cartoons. And I gotta say, these two are easily the funniest adult cartoons that I watch, and I still have a hard time deciding which one I think is funnier. Right now, I think it's a dead even tie between the two. It's a real dead even tie, like split 50-50. Um, and again, you tell me which one you think is funnier. Do you think Family Guy's funnier, South Park's funnier, or they both equally the same? Or some of you watching this may not watch either show and you may not think either one is funny, and that's perfectly understandable for some obvious reasons. Now, here's what I want to talk about here. Let me pull it up here. So, South Park had a two-part episode in season 10 in 2006 called Cartoon Wars. Now, the base of this episode was that Kyle and Cartman were arguing over Family Guy. Kyle likes the show, he thinks it's funny. Cartman hates it, he thinks it's stupid and offensive, which is ironic coming from him. And if you watch South Park, you know what I'm talking about. So, um, let me go to right here. Okay, so Kyle and Cartman were at war over the controversial cartoon Family Guy. Kyle likes it, Cartman hates it. Break down this episode's themes, messages, and harsh jokes, critiques about Family Guy. Now, here's some of the themes that episode covered. One, free speech versus censorship. The central conflict revolves around Family Guy airing an episode that depicts the Prophet Muhammad, which leads to widespread controversy and a terrorist threat. Kyle argues for Family Guy's right to free speech, insisting that censoring it sets a dangerous precedent. Cartman, however, pretends that he is against the episode due to its potential consequences, but is actually using it as an excuse to destroy Family Guy altogether because he hates it. Now, the second thing is satirical versus non satirical comedy. Cartman's hatred for Family Guy represents a critique of the show's style of humor, its heavy reliance on cutaway gags rather than meaningful storytelling or satire. He passionately argues that Family Guy's jokes are random and lack substance, saying either it's all okay or none of it is, mocking the idea that a show can simply throw out unrelated offensive jokes without a deeper message. Three, artistic integrity versus corporate interest. The network executives at Fox are shown as spineless, caving to threats and controversy. The reveal that Family Guy is written by a group of manatees, randomly selecting joke topics from the idea balls, is a biting metaphor for how South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone see the show's writing process: lazy, uninspired, and purely for cheap laughs. So let me pause right there for a second. And anybody who saw the episode already knows what I'm talking about. But to those of you that didn't see it, there's a scene in that South Park episode where they visit this tank, and there's literally manatees in there, like the animal manatee. And this one manatee pulls out five balls and drops it into the idea section. And each of the balls has something random written on it. And the five of them, here's what they said: laundry, date, winning, Mexico, Gary Coleman. And then they created this cutaway scene where, uh, Gary Coleman was on a date in Mexico. And again, it was just a random joke. But again, they're making fun of the idea that Family Guy just does random jokes. And also, let me point this out here. And this goes same thing like with musicians, comedians, whatever. When people create a show, they choose what they, and this goes without saying, but they decide how they want their show to go. So when Seth MacFarlane and the rest of the team created Family Guy, they said, okay, most of the humor of this show is going to be based off of cutaway gags, which is we make a joke about something and then we're going to cut to a scene, which usually lasts anywhere from like, for the most part, like 10 to 20 seconds, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. And th- That's basically most of the show's humor. Now, again, South Park is saying that's a lazy way of doing comedy. But hey, guess what? That's what they chose to do, and there's a lot of people that find it funny. And that show has been on for, I mean, that show looks like it's gonna be the next Simpsons, so to say, as far as the longevity of it. I think it's now in its 23rd season. And here's the other thing South Park points out: hypocrisy in media and society. The episode highlights hypocrisy in what people choose to be offended by, particularly regarding religious figures and censorship. The idea that Fox would censor Muhammad, but not the other offensive material, such as Jesus being depicted in crude ways, is a pointed critique of inconsistent standards in media. Now, they make harsh jokes about Family Guy. I've already covered the manatee thing. Let's see. Cartman's argument is that Family Guy is ruining comedy. He tells network executives that Family Guy is bad for comedy because it doesn't take responsibility for its jokes. This is Trey Parker and Matt Stone venting their frustration with how Family Guy often gets away with offensive humor by claiming it's all in good fun, while South Park tries to have a satirical point. I'm not gonna lie, that's a little bit that's a little bit confusing, but it's like I question, like, are they actually feeling this way? Because let's face the facts. I think that Family Guy and South Park have way more similarities than they do differences. And those similarities are obvious, which is they both tend to make fun of anything and everything, anybody and everybody. You know, they both make fun of a lot of the same celebrities, you know, Britney Spears, Paris Hilton. You know, they both obviously make fun of politicians. They make jokes about Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump. Um, a lot of the taboo subject matter they both have talked about. I do think South Park has done some of it a little more. So they both talked about, let's say, abortion. They talked about LGB. They make gay jokes. They make race jokes. There's political jokes, religious jokes. They both have joked about 9/11, the Holocaust, the Jews, the Nazis. Like they both talked about that. Although I will say I think South Park hit it a little harsher on some of those things. But again, if you watch both shows even on a semi-regular basis, you know what I'm talking about and what I'm referring to. And so I look at that and I say, well, listen, if that's really how Matt Stone and Trey Parker feel, then I would have to disagree with their point about getting away with stuff, because a lot of the things, 95 to 99% of what Family Guy has made fun of, broadly speaking, South Park has also made fun of. Okay, Family Guy makes religious jokes. They talked about, or matter of fact, let me just go to the other one. Let's say they talk politics. They made jokes about George Bush, for example. Let's face it, regardless of what political party you align with, almost every show on television that you know made fun of George Bush at least once during the time that he was president. And they did the same thing with Trump. A lot of them did it with Obama and Clinton to a degree. And to me, that's a little bit, they're pointing out hypocrisy, but then are they pointing out the hypocrisy in both Family Guy and themselves? Because if they're doing that, then I can say, okay, well, that's at least being honest, that you're acknowledging that your show gets away with a lot of that type of humor as well. Henceforth, both shows are controversial. And of course, they're not the only shows that do that. I mean, you got plenty of others. You have, of course, I think they do it to a lesser degree. I mean, you have American Dad, you have The Simpsons, you have King of the Hill, and Boondocks, and some other ones. But now here's the Family Guy defense argument. Kyle defends Family Guy, arguing that humor should be uncensored and that removing one joke because it's offensive will lead to more censorship. The episode presents Family Guy's existence as a necessary evil. Whether you like its humor or not, it should be allowed to air. Okay, now Carmen sounds like to censor and all that. Now, I'm going to skip a lot of this right here, and I'm just going to cut to this. So, Family Guy now has 23 seasons, and I can't speak for everybody who watches the show, but I know people personally, and I've seen people online as well, that they've noticed that it started to decline around this time. Some people say that it declined around the 12th season, others say it declined around the 16th season. Keep in mind that when that South Park episode aired, that was in 2006, and at the time it aired, I believe Family Guy was in the 4th season. So Family Guy was at its peak. That was like at its best, like between the 4th and 6th seasons. That was Family Guy at an all-time high. So I'm trying to think of how I can word this. Like, it started to decline in terms of quality years and years and years later. Which brings me to this next question. It brings me to the question of, did South Park ruin Family Guy? Did it, in other words, like, is it responsible for shifting people's perception of the show and then looking at it and saying, you know what, this doesn't make sense? Now, here's what I typed in on ChatGPT, and I think that, again, ChatGPT is my favorite website now, especially when it comes to breaking down stuff and really learning. Here's what I typed in. Many people would argue that this episode was responsible for shifting people's perception of Family Guy. Others say no. The question is, did South Park directly / indirectly ruin Family Guy? Here's the arguments and theories for both sides. Now, the two-part episode Cartoon Wars has long stirred debate about its influence on public perception of Family Guy. It directly critiques Family Guy's writing style, comedic approach, and cultural value, and many viewers and critics argue that it marked a turning point in how the show was viewed. Others say Family Guy was already facing criticism, and South Park only echoed pre-existing sentiments. Now, here's the argument. Here are the arguments that say yes, South Park ruined Family Guy's reputation, or at least they helped it. Number one, okay, so there's 4 arguments underneath that. Number one, mass exposure of criticisms. South Park aired on the same network, Comedy Central, and had a large following. The episode called out Family Guy's over reliance on cutaway gags and random humor, framing it as lazy and lacking substance. To be fair, that's kind of true to a degree. So yeah, Family Guy does rely on cutaway gags and random humor to generate some laughs. But guess what? A lot of people find that funny, and a lot of people don't. But maybe they intended maybe Seth MacFarlane and the Family Guy team, maybe it's possible that they intended for the show to be lazy and substantially bankrupt. If I'm saying that right, it's lacking substance. So maybe that's what they wanted. And by the way, let's remember, they're both cartoons. So who's really taking it that seriously, right? It's a cartoon. Either you think it's funny or you don't. That's not to say that people don't have their right to be offended by it, because if it's disgusting, if it's gross to you, which a lot of people find it to be for obvious reasons, then just do what your parents and grandparents told you to do. Then just don't watch it. You don't have to watch it. It's not for everybody. Family Guy isn't for everybody. South Park isn't for everybody. Even some of the cleaner cartoons like King of the Hill or The Simpsons, they're not for everybody. Many viewers who casually watched Family Guy may have never deeply analyzed its writing until South Park put it under a microscope. Number 2, credibility of Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Matt and Trey were respected for South Park's satirical sharpness and topical depth. Their harsh critique carried weight, especially when they compared Family Guy writers to manatees randomly picking balls with ideas, a literal scene in the episode. This absurd metaphor became iconic, driving home the idea that Family Guy lacked meaningful creativity. Again, it's been on for 23 seasons. Now, granted, Family Guy was canceled at a point years ago, after the 3rd season, I believe, and they were off the air for a good 2.5, 3 years, and then once they came back, they were arguably doing better because, like I said, they went all the way up to 23, and they haven't been canceled since. So, again, that's not an argument to say, well, this is why you should like Family Guy. It's just saying, like, hey, you can argue against the style of humor or you can disagree with it, but I don't deny their success. That's the thing. Now, here's the thing. Number 3, backlash and memification. After the episode, mocking Family Guy became culturally popular and meme-worthy. It became cool in online circles to criticize the show as shallow, juvenile, and formulaic. Many comedy fans started distancing themselves from Family Guy while praising shows like South Park, The Simpsons, or Futurama for deeper satire. Shift in critical reception, which is number 4. Critics became increasingly vocal post-2006 about Family Guy's lack of evolution. Cartoon Wars may have catalyzed a trend where critics began evaluating Family Guy more harshly, especially as it returned from cancellation in 2005 and continued into later seasons. Now, here's some arguments that say no, South Park did not ruin Family Guy, it was already under fire. Here are these arguments. Number one, Family Guy was already divisive. Even before 2006, Family Guy had vocal detractors for its shock humor, which South Park has, offensive jokes, which South Park also has, and cutaway reliance. Okay, South Park doesn't have that. So, critics had long debated whether it was clever or just chaotic. In 2002, its 2002 cancellation by Fox was partly due to poor ratings and mixed reception. Number two, huge fan base, still loved it. And hey, I'm part of that fan base and I still love Family Guy and South Park. Despite the criticism, Family Guy had and still has a dedicated fan base. The show was brought back due to high DVD sales and rerun popularity on Adult Swim. The manatee criticism didn't deter loyal fans who embraced the randomness. There you go. There are fans who embrace the randomness, as I said earlier. Number three, Seth MacFarlane's success continued. Family Guy remained commercially successful even after Cartoon Wars. Seth MacFarlane expanded with a couple other cartoons, American Dad and Family Guy spinoff The Cleveland Show, and both of them were hilarious, by the way. He also succeeded in film, the movie Ted, two of them actually. The first one was better, but both were good. And then there was another movie that he did with Sarah Silverman and Liam Neeson and Charlize Theron called A Million Ways to Die in the West, proving that Cartoon Wars didn't stop his rise. Number four, criticism didn't equal collapse. Unlike The Simpsons, which experienced visible decline in cultural relevance, Family Guy remained a staple in adult animation. The jokes in Cartoon Wars didn't actually lead to a mass exodus. The show even won an Emmy in 2009. Okay, there you go. Now, here's the argument that says it's a neutral theory. South Park amplified a shift that was already happening. So here's what it says. Cartoon Wars didn't start the downfall or criticism of Family Guy, but it gave it a megaphone. The timing in 2006 was key. The internet and meme culture were growing, and South Park gave people a catchy way to articulate why they disliked Family Guy. It planted the idea in viewers' minds that Family Guy was dumb humor, shaping discourse in fan communities, forums, and YouTube reviews for years to come. Now, here's the final thoughts on that. Did South Park ruin Family Guy? Not directly, but it brilliantly articulated a critique that stuck with people, and that critique contributed to a longer-term shift in public perception. Whether you see that as a ruining or revealing depends on how much credit you give to the South Park creators and how much you valued Family Guy in the first place. So, I think those are intelligent arguments, and I'm trying to decide where I fall at on that one because, so here's the deal. There's a part of me that just kind of thinks, you know what? They did that episode for fun, and I know that there are some Family Guy fans who are against South Park, and so if they had seen that episode, they're probably like, oh, these are just a bunch of haters, and their style of humor is so stupid, and they don't understand Family Guy's humor because they haven't watched enough of it. Family Guy is just easily funnier. It's just easily better. And the South Park fans that are against Family Guy, they're saying, well, yeah, they're spot on with this one because Family Guy just has no real comedy to it and it's just not funny. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of a lot of comics who were criticizing Dane Cook like at the height of his career or like right after the height, and a lot of them were just constantly criticizing him, and they said, oh, he's not funny at all, and he's not successful, he's not fun. Well, if he's not successful, then how did he sell out Madison Square Garden? And he made some top movies, and his peak was there for a bit. But there was one comedian, I can't remember who it was. I don't remember if it was what's his name that passed away in 2000. Oh my goodness. I don't know if it was Greg Giraldo. I don't know if it was him or was it Adam Carolla or was it, I can't remember exactly who said this, but he made a good point. He said, well, he doesn't make me laugh, but that doesn't mean that he's not funny. I think that's a smart statement. I think that makes perfect sense. And I look at this as both a fan. I'm a fan of both Family Guy and South Park, and I think both shows are equally funny. And I would just say, listen, Even as a person who's been an avid fan of these shows, and I've been watching both shows for 20 years now, I would say, yeah, I get why a lot of people don't like Family Guy or South Park because both shows do tend to make jokes about things that are considered controversial, offensive, taboo. Like I said, they've talked religion, they've talked politics, they talk race, they have a bunch of raunchy sex jokes. They've made the jokes about 9/11, Holocaust. They've made plenty of historical references. They've both talked about slavery. They both talked about the KKK. I mean, so there's a lot of things that they covered that anybody could look at that and say, yeah, no. And some people have the right to just walk away and not watch it and not listen to it. They just be like, you know what? Forget both these shows because they both suck. They're both offensive. But I still say this. I'm on the side of, listen, if you don't like either show, then just don't watch it. And I would also say that the people of South Park have to acknowledge, which they kind of somewhat did in that episode, they would have to acknowledge, like, look, this show is not really that funny to us, but we understand that it has its base and it has its supporters and its fans. Because if they didn't, they wouldn't have made it as long as they did, and they would have stayed canceled after the first 3 seasons. A lot of other people made the same. They said the same thing about South Park. And by the way, both shows also criticized The Simpsons, and they said they stopped being funny after like season 13 or 14. And now here they are in season 36. That show's gonna go on forever. It's never gonna end. So, and let me see. I thought there was one more part of this that I wanted to read, and let me go right here. Um, I asked this to ChatGPT. I said, okay, some of that is saying the same thing. Family Guy uses cheap humor. Okay, I said this. Here we go. What do you say to the argument that a lot of people already had this opinion of Family Guy even before the Cartoon Wars episode aired? Now, here are the theories. ChatGPT says this. I just lost it. Oh, here we go. There's definitely merit to the argument that many people already had criticisms of Family Guy's humor before Cartoon Wars aired. In fact, South Park's takedown of Family Guy was likely a reflection of sentiments that were already circulating among fans of animation, comedy critics, and even within the industry. Here's a breakdown of why Cartoon Wars may have amplified an existing perception rather than created it. Family Guy had already been criticized for its random cutaway heavy style. Before Cartoon Wars, which aired in 2006, Family Guy had already developed a reputation for relying on cutaway gags that often had nothing to do with the plot. But again, that's the purpose of the show, is that most of the cutaways don't have anything to do with the plot. That's the comedy of the show. Now again, you can look at that one of two ways. You could say, hey, the fact that they do these random cutaways that has nothing to do with the plot, it's dumb, it's stupid, and it's intellectually lazy, and therefore it's not funny. But then the other people are saying, well, the fact that they derive from the plot for a random joke is what makes it funny, because random stuff is just funny to a lot of people. So they say it's random, therefore it's funny. And some people just say, hey, I don't care, I don't watch either show, I don't understand either one enough. That's fine too. Some critics and viewers have pointed out that the humor was scatterbrained and lacked depth compared to other animated shows like King of the Hill or The Simpsons. A common criticism was that Family Guy's jokes could be interchangeable across episodes, meaning they weren't specific to the story, but just thrown in for quick laughs. Again, to be fair, it's a cartoon, so who's taking it that seriously? Family Guy had a divisive reputation before its revival. When Family Guy originally aired from 1999 to 2002, before it was canceled, it wasn't universally loved. It had a cult following, but mainstream audiences and critics had mixed opinions. When it was revived in 2005 due to high DVD sales, some people were excited while others felt that its return emphasized style over substance. Many saw the early revival seasons, like 4 and 5, as even more reliant on shock humor and randomness than before. That part I can kind of agree with, because when you look at the later seasons of Family Guy, some of those jokes and some of those the gags that they did there were a little bit more for shock value compared to the first 2 seasons. The first 2 seasons of Family Guy was basically like it was basically just a slightly more crude version of The Simpsons. if you really think about it. South Park was likely tapping into an already existing sentiment. Let me see. The creators of South Park, Matt Stone and Trey Parker, have always been very aware of comedy culture and audience discussions. Cartoon Wars may have been their way of voicing frustration that many people already had, but weren't articulating on a large scale. By framing Family Guy's writing process as being run by manatees selecting random joke balls, they took a pre-existing critique and made it iconic. The post-Cartoon Wars effect, amplification versus creation. While the argument existed before Cartoon Wars, the episode gave it a clear, humorous metaphor that stuck with people. Before Cartoon Wars, people may have thought, yeah, Family Guy relies too much on random jokes. After Cartoon Wars, people would say it's literally like a bunch of manatees picking random ideas and shoving them together. The episode didn't invent the criticism, but it gave people a viral way to express it. Family Guy's own writers and critics acknowledged the issue. Seth MacFarlane and Family Guy's writers were well aware of these criticisms even before Cartoon Wars aired. In later seasons, Family Guy even mocked itself for relying on cutaway gags, showing that they knew people saw this as a weakness. That's true, they did. Matter of fact, they even had a whole episode that was called Cutaway Land. I think it was in season 18. And even before that, they were just making fun of themselves because they do cutaways. But at the end of the day, guess what? It's a cartoon. They make fun of a lot of people and a lot of things. They also make fun of themselves. South Park kind of makes fun of itself a little bit to a degree. But again, I have to respect both shows for the fact that they both are no holds barred. They take the gloves off. They, again, you name any celebrity, chances are they've hit that celebrity. Anybody that Family Guy's made fun of, chances are that person's been made fun of in South Park. You look at old controversial cases like O.J. Simpson, for example, or the Clinton Lewinsky thing, or Jeffrey Dahmer. They both touched on that. Critics of animation and comedy also pointed out that Family Guy's randomness sometimes came at the cost of character development and story depth. So here's the final verdict. Cartoon Wars didn't start the criticism, but it made it iconic. It's fair to say that Cartoon Wars didn't single-handedly change the way people viewed Family Guy. The criticisms already existed. South Park just amplified them, gave them a visual metaphor, the manatees, and pushed them into the mainstream consciousness. If anything, the episode acted as a catalyst, bringing an insider complaint into public discourse. Before Cartoon Wars, some fans and critics saw Family Guy as lazy, but after the episode, this perception became much more widespread. So, I don't know, just based on all of that right there, and listen, guys, if you're watching this video, and it might be difficult for you to answer the question if you haven't seen either show, or maybe if you have seen a little bit of them, but you don't watch it much. But anybody here who either is, if you're a fan of Family Guy, if you're a fan of South Park, if you're a fan of both shows, or if you're just a half fan and let's say you watch either show sometimes, like, I'm just curious, like, really, give me your thoughts and put it in the comment section. Tell me what you think about this, and you tell me, hey, did South Park ruin Family Guy's perception? Like, are they the reason why not the reason that they declined in quality over the years, but the reason why more and more people started to find it less funny? Now, again, if you're watching this on Facebook, the link to my YouTube is in the comment section. All my social media links are in the About section. If you're watching it on YouTube, same thing here. The links to my socials are in the About section. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Those are the only 5 that I use. I also recently created Blue Sky, but I haven't hardly put anything on it yet. But I didn't put that link up yet. But if you see my name on anything else, just know that it's fake, because those are the only ones that I use. So I'm still trying to decide, where do I stand at on all this? Again, I think that South Park kind of had a hand in it, but I don't think that episode of South Park had direct influence to people's perception of Family Guy at the given time. I think people look back at that episode in retrospect and they thought, you know what? These cutaways make no sense. And I think South Park was 100% on point with that. And listen, I think South Park is now in the 7th, maybe 28th season now. So congrats to them. They've been going for a long time too, and they've never been canceled. They've gone continuously. They've been on since 1997. They're doing their thing. Family Guy, they came out right after that, 1999. They're in the 23rd season now. They would have a couple extra seasons if they didn't get canceled for that 2 or 3 year gap. But I really wanted to get that out the way because, again, this is what I like to do. I like to talk TV shows, movies, video games, celebrity stories, and I just like to give my take, and I also like to hear other people's take on it. So you tell me, did which show do you think is funnier? Did South Park have any effect on what degree of an effect do you think South Park had on people's perception of Family Guy? I think that's the more accurate question. So you give me your thoughts, put it in the comment section, and if you have any suggestions for other shows that you think I should talk about or compare to, whether it be Family Guy versus The Simpsons or King of the Hill versus Simpsons or Family Guy or South Park, whatever, you give me your thoughts, put it below. You give me the suggestions, I'll talk about it. If you guys want to do some segments together, whether it be video or audio, I'm open to discussing that too. It's much more fun and productive, in my opinion, to be debating this type of stuff as opposed to just the politics stuff, because I think TV shows are much less divisive than politics is. So anyway, that's that. Stay tuned.